Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to this Wednesday, February 26th, 2020 council working session. And what we will do is we will call the meeting to order, and discussion topics will kind of work our way down a list here. This meeting will have some bit part structure and a little kind of conversational as we go, but I think what we'll do is start out with, yes, I think we'll start out with Mr. Bixler, kind of lead us off, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you. Dave Bixler, budget analyst for the City Council. Today, the work session, you're going to come up with some ideas to forward to the administration of requests that the council might have to be considered for the 2021 budget. So we'll have the list. Here's the list that we came up with from last year. And so it gives you an idea of, we came up with 29 items from last year's session. And so I'm going to also ask Director Pritchett to come up and discuss a little bit about the budget process.
Okay. Welcome, Director Pritchett.
Welcome. Appreciate the invitation to come talk today. As David alluded to, we are ramping up right now our budget process for the city. And so we are working toward the presentation of the proposed budget and capital program, which will be forthcoming later on this year and for hearings in August. A couple of timelines that I would just kind of give you some awareness of where we are is we do have requests out to our departments as well to be providing some of their thoughts and ideas for budget requests, and many of those are going to be due at the end of this month in terms of the operational side. At the end of next month, we're asking for quite a bit of their information regarding the capital program, and then we begin the internal review process as well. So I would say this work session is certainly timely in terms of gathering additional insights and ideas and what you guys our thoughts are in regard to the budget process. So we'll be looking forward to some of the ideas and thoughts that come forward from this. I'll also kind of give you a little bit of a preview. One of the things that we will be looking at this year is refreshing our budget book. We have not reformatted this book in many, many years. It's kind of had the same format. We are reviewing other similar types of similar book formats that have been utilized in other communities. I think our objective is to really be able to provide the information in a way that's transparent but also usable to the public in a way that they can relate. But also continue to have the detailed information that will help with the decision-making process as well. So that's something that will be forthcoming this year. Not going to be making any changes to the capital program book as we kind of focus on the budget book first. So with that, any questions? Otherwise, I'm just here to listen and look forward to hearing you. Thanks.
Thank you. So I think what we'll probably do, I believe a couple of you have a presentation or maybe a guest, and why don't we maybe start with Councilor Staley on this end. We'll work our way around and then go from there.
Thank you. Dave, if you'd put the whole list up. So for those of you who are the media, other people visiting, this was an idea that we came up with a year ago to allow the council to let the city know, the mayor and his administration, what things that we feel are important, things we've heard from the constituents, and things that may be important in our own hearts. And so this is, I'm thinking for myself, this is like planting seeds in a garden. They may not germinate right away, but at least we're putting it out there and making an awareness energy happen with our wonderful finance director, Sean Pritchett. And Sean, if I may say, I really appreciate your listening last year, and there was some responsiveness. We got some things added to the budget that were really neat and helpful to the community. So throwing some things out, and we're going to put these out there, and then our plan was going to be hopefully to rank them within the council like we did last year, and just to give that as a sign to the administration that these are important. So street repair, I think speaks for itself. That's always, from what I'm hearing from my constituents, that people want more and more of our revenue to be put towards taking care of the roads. And solar speed signs and regular speed signs, another thing that I just continue to want to be added to the budget, and I did bring this up back in 2016, and where you have those flashing signs by school districts, and they also use them in some of the streets, and I've heard positive feedback. But the thing have said a number of times is those flashing signs don't work unless you see the actual speed limit right next to it. And I was coming down, I think it was over on Marion Road last week, and they have one there, and right after you pass the flashing speed sign is the speed limit. So it really was a reinforcer of this is the limit to adhere to. So the next thing we have is the Scoop It program. Now, I contacted Warden Young, Darren Young is here today from the penitentiary, and I met with him 2 years ago, at least 2 years ago. It was, yeah, before the mayoral election, and we were talking about the Scoop It program because it had been discontinued. And I wanted to reach out to him personally and find out why we discontinued this for our citizens and get some details on it. And out of that conversation, I became very educated about the resources available in workforce from our penitentiary. So I would like to see this, in my opinion, added to our budget to fund supervisors to supervise the penitentiary workforce to reinstate this for our citizens. And the citizens, I think Gordon, Warden Young, you might be touching on this, but we talk about people with a disability, people who are elderly, and people who had a financial burden as well. There were some criteria that you had to adhere to. So I wanted him to come forward today and just give us a little background about how that Scoop It program evolved and why it was discontinued. And maybe we could talk about what it would take to bring that back with the city as a partner. So if you would come forward, please. Warden.
Welcome. If you can introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Darren Young, Warden of the Penitentiary in Sioux Falls and Director of Prison Operations for the state. So good afternoon. I was asked to come here and talk about this a little bit. I think maybe, hopefully be informative of maybe some of the history and where things, and the potential, I guess maybe would be the best way to put this. The Scoop It program started back in Sioux Falls in 2001 and expanded to other communities across the state of South Dakota, so that where we had minimum units like Yankton and Rapid City and Pierre. So in Sioux Falls, it started in 2001 and it discontinued in November of 2017. It was a pretty lengthy program. It's pretty beneficial, provided a good service, we believe, to the community here. And there was some criteria that was put together. You know, who doesn't want to get their sidewalks and driveways shoveled for free, right? But there had to be some criteria for this. And that was put together not necessarily by us, but it was through the 211 program is where people called in. And then they vetted that out. And some of the criteria that was just mentioned, financial means, you know, you may have been able to afford it. We're not going to be up there in the probably doing those mansions. We're going to be in those areas of people who have either financial burdens, so they can't afford to pay for it, and they're incapable, whether that's elderly or some physical or mobility issues. And they also don't have any other ways getting this done. Helps them be in compliant with the city ordinances, and also helps just their own safety of moving in and out of their homes. Over the time, as many businesses have, staffing is an issue. And so that became more of a hardship for us, that when we had, these are difficult to effectively plan for. We don't know when it's going to snow and how much it's going to snow, what the effect will be. And we were scheduling, we'd have to call people in and pay overtime or short ourselves the security of the institution. And I think that our main mission is the security of the institution. I think that's what the public is looking for us to do. So after a few years of that cost elevating quite a bit for us, and we decided that we needed to end the DOC staffing this program. But we also want to make sure that people know the labor resource, the inmate labor, is still available. It is today as well. So I think that's kind of where it comes in today, is the resources is still there. It's still a very affordable resource, but somebody, who wants to take that on, I guess, is the next piece of it. So that's, it's kind of, you do a lot of community service already across the state. We have inmates working in lots of programs every day. They're in the community, and they do a variety of jobs. And we train people in these locations. We work for government agencies and for nonprofit organizations. And the people that are responsible for the inmates do have to take some training, and it gets annual training every year to get that refresher training once they've gone through that. And it's been a very good experience for us, and we have a long history of that kind of work programs. So I think that kind of covers the kinds of history, and maybe if you have any questions about potential.
Well, so let's just say if we were able to put into the budget $25,000 for us to provide a supervisor, because that's what it takes. It would take the city to say, these are some supervisors, and I heard you say about $30 an hour is
That's
what
about
you were
what our
paying?
overtime cost. And every time we sent somebody out was going to be overtime. So every time I sent a supervisor out or an officer out, it was on overtime. And our average overtime wage is just under $30 an hour.
So feasibly, if the city was going to do it, we wouldn't be necessarily paying overtime. If we had some part-time people that were going to do it, they just have to get the training.
Correct.
What you're saying for that. And then they would pick, who provides the vehicle?
If it's a city-run program, the city would provide that vehicle, and
So when you were doing it, you provided the vehicle?
yeah, we used our
Penitentiary.
Suburbans, is what we used. We had our crews would be 4 or 5 inmates, one supervisor with 4 or 5 inmates, and we would send out 4 or 5 crews every snowfall.
Okay.
So you start adding that up, you can see, depending on the winter, knock on some wood, we're doing okay today, but last winter was a tough winter. So it kind of depends on that. So and Mother Nature doesn't discriminate against holidays and weekends, and getting people to come in on Christmas Day and go out and do this was a challenge for us. Those kinds of things.
Well, and I'm wondering if we could ever have it where the city would pay you to have your guys do it so we could use your vehicle.
Probably don't know if you want to afford all that, though.
Well, I mean, that's why it's good to have these discussions to say, what would it take for the city to take this on?
We're not looking to go into that program back that direction. We would be willing to supply the inmate labor, to train people to do it, but we would want somebody to take that over.
And the VAD?
What's that?
Can we rent your VAD?
I don't think, I think you have to, there's state, either policy or on who can drive safe vehicles.
And maybe I don't know, we might have vans too. So,
Right.
I mean, it's good. This is all just kind of a learning thing of saying, this is where we were, this is where we could go. So.
Just to give you an idea, a little bit too of the resident list. I don't remember the final numbers, but it had kind of grown out of control, and that's where we asked 211 to kind of help vet this. I think we were in somewhere between 80 and 90 residences that we were kind of averaging toward when they got kind of organized to see, okay, how they went through that. So that gives you kind of an idea of how many residents we were going to. If you're looking to go this direction, that where you may be headed is somewhere in that range.
But you had 5 guys. So actually, if the city did take it on and we used a vehicle, like a car, we could get like 4 people in a car.
And whatever size
Yeah,
shovel you
so
want to use.
put the shovels in the trunk and, yeah, okay. 211,
Yes. Yep.
great.
So,
Okay, any other questions?
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Hey, Warden, maybe just not a specific program, but something maybe a little bit broader of the inmate services that would be available. Can you touch on what would help you and your program? Obviously, the protecting the institution, I get that part of it, but what would be better for the community to say, what kind of programs are we looking for? I know that, that nonprofit organizations, some of the things that Pheasant Land Industries does through the list of things, but what experiences would an inmate be looking for so that when they do rejoin society, they have some skills that are available to them to be employed right away or to continue on those type of things? So where would that benefit be for the overall community as well for those type of experiences that lead to a job so that they can sustain themselves, as well as the restitution part of it that would go with it as well? Or whether it's child support and restitution and how we pay them.
sure.
Try to throw up as big a softball as I could give you, so swing away.
All right, we'll see. I don't know if I need to ask council or chair to speak, but
We're pretty
I'll keep
loose
going.
this afternoon. We're not as tight as
Perfect.
the
All right,
legislature
okay.
on some of that, so this is more informal this afternoon, so.
Very good. So we have a couple programs and we have a couple of things we kind of try to work towards. We know that 95% of our inmates are going to rejoin society someday. And I hope that society is hoping that when they leave us and return to society, that they are in a better position to not continue their criminal ways. We try to work on the hard skills and the soft skills. Hard skills, the training of carpentry work, I'll say, or some of the graphic designs to upholstery work, to a sign shop, a lot of different things like that. Then there's the soft skills, and really the community service work does a good blend of that as well. The community service work for our minimum inmates is working on some hard skills, but a lot of soft skills. Show up for work, how to work with others, how to work for someone. Those kinds of things are important because we all know with the amount of vacancy rates of the jobs around town that a lot of times if people can just show up and be trainable, they can go a long ways. And so there's a lot of different jobs that we currently do with our minimum inmates right now. So we are working with the city at the landfill. We have 4 inmates out there. We work at the fairgrounds. Depending upon the time of year, will depend upon how many inmates are out there, but it may be 6 right now, and during fair week, it might be a dozen. And they do a variety of things there. We work at the Department of Transportation, Game Fish and Parks, Furniture Mission, a lot of areas. Some of it is going to be entry-level work because the turnover, they may not be there for a couple months, sometime until they get out. Some of them might be there for a year, and depending upon their length of time will depend on the amount of work that they may and skills they may learn. One of those advantages, though, is that, maybe I'll just use the city since we're at is as an example. There are some guys working at the landfill. I assume that it means there must be some vacancies out there. If one of these guys can show through this work that they can show up, they can work well with others, they can learn. I don't know what all the job skills and job duties are out there. If they can learn those, and he's getting out, and they've been doing this for 6 months, you might be more inclined to hire that guy full time and become a taxpayer again, and those kinds of things. So I think it shows several aspects of this, of our different work programs to benefit the inmate, to benefit their families, to benefit society and our workload here.
No, it's one of the things that we talk about all the time is workforce development and finding people that can fit back into to society is what we're looking for. We're looking, you know, I mean, I would say the business community says the same thing we do. As a large employer, one of the largest employers in Sioux Falls, we struggle with the same type of issues. One of the things that I struggle with philosophically is the pay level.
Okay?
And part of that is, and I understand that, you know, these are probably some of the best jobs that are in demand for the inmates because it's some of the highest paid work that they have, but it's still at a very low rate. And I struggle with understanding because for me, one of the things that I would assume that a lot of the prisoners have as issues are catching up on past bills, restitution to the county and society, the child care things that they need to, and help me with the $1.25 an hour being an adequate way to pay them. I'm not saying turning it over for, you know, snacks and food and other things, but if there was a, you know, why wouldn't we pay minimum wage so that that money could go towards whether it's savings for housing when they get out, or again, the list of restitution, family obligations, things they've fallen behind on while they've been incarcerated.
Sure. If the $1.25 disappoints you, what I'm about to tell you might be even more disappointing to you.
I know some of the other numbers too,
Okay.
and so I get it. So the
$1.25 would be the agency, the host agency's cost. The actual payment to the inmate is 25 cents an hour. So why the low wages? Every one of their, you know, the Department of Corrections has a budget of, you know, 100 and I forget the exact dollar this year, $116 million. To pay all the inmates minimum wage would drive that up, which would, of course, all of us as taxpayers would have to pay those wages. And that is paying for all their medical care. A lot of the guys come in with poor medical conditions, and they are given good medical care. All their meals, all their housing, all their bills are paid while they're there, as far as what they're accumulating while they're there. Those few jobs that we do have, or the private sector that are prevailing wage jobs, you know, we have a financial responsibility policy. We have it for everybody. If somebody comes into money, some of that money is divvied up and does pay all their court-ordered obligations like restitution, attorney fees, fines, child support, those kinds of things. But you'll find that most of the guys are not, they're not paying that until they make those better wages. Absolutely. When you're making $1.25 an hour, you're making about, you know, $46 a month, and so it is a challenge. However, that money is enough to pay for the commissary items that they need for hygiene. So and if they don't have the money for hygiene, we as taxpayers pay all that already, so.
Well, like I said, I understand where we're headed in the philosophy of the program and some of those things, but I look at you know, you also have a debt to society. You know, you have some responsibilities to take care of yourself, and that's part of learning through the process too. But you haven't had a lack of people that are willing to participate. It seems most of the time you have an adequate workforce for the requests that you have. So that's why I try to, you know, balance some of that, but the reward that goes with it, and to be able to, again, making them able to re-enter society, that if they can handle some of these things, and at $46 a month, doesn't make a big dent into making sure kids have clothes and being able to support their families. And again, that's part of the penalty. I get that. So not being derogatory towards the process, it's understanding what the process is. And I don't want to drag all the other nonprofits who are getting a pretty good deal that, you know, fund their mission of their organizations as well. And so I'm not trying to drag that there, but I'm trying to make sure that there's proper motivation and that people are rewarded for the work that they do, so that there is a positive experience that goes with it as well.
Let me go one step further with that. I can't remember if you were on a tour of Pheasant Industries.
Yeah, because you still want your traffic fixed in the way I drive when I go by the facility every morning. So.
Yes. So the skills, so you've witnessed the skills that they're gaining, the computer graphics, the CNC machines, the welding. Those are all programs that people in the society are going to have to pay for to attend those. Those are skills that they would have to go through and pay those programs to learn those skills. So it does kind of offset somewhat that you're learning how to become a carpenter and can go get a $25 an hour job when you leave prison versus having to steal and rob to survive. So they are gaining those kinds of skills too. Some people certainly walked in with those. People come to the prison with all walks of life. They may have had those skills, but they also may have to find a new, their lifestyle might have to change after their felony on their record too. So they may have to find some other skills that can, so when you balance all that out, we reinvest to improve our equipment so that when they're leaving, that they're working with machines that they can go get jobs and not dealing with machines that are from the 60s and they're not going to be able to get a job because this technology's gone past them. So yeah, the money has to come somewhere, has to go somewhere, and we're not the lowest paid DOC in the nation. There are some that pay nothing. There are some that pay 3 cents an hour, and there are some that pay more. So we're kind of more in the middle of the pack, I believe.
Well, and I think as a community, we gain significantly, whether it's the Governor's House programs, whether it's the Braille things that you're doing, that just the entire nation benefits, because that program doesn't exist in other places, or the cost is a lot. So license plates is probably what a lot of people think about. And so the things that go through Pheasant Land, I am appreciative of as well, too. So, I mean, I get that partnership. So I just hope we continue to expand it so that it does become a positive. When you say 95% are going to rejoin society, let's give them as much as we can to get them back to, and penalize them and that part of it as well. I mean, that's what society expects. So, thank you.
You bet. Councilor Neitzer.
Warden, just a quick question. The administration has been taking on more inmate labor, which is great. However, there have been a few things that I have asked about, and they've brought up what they perceive as a challenge, and maybe you can help me with whatever the rules are and whether we can break through that barrier.
Right.
And that has to do with things where they're more mobile, and what they say is that they would have to carry basically a porta potty around. So what are the rules as it pertains to lavatories, and can a prisoner walk into a gas station? How does that work? What are they allowed to do in terms of if they need to use a restroom?
Oh, okay. I don't know specifics, but yes, we expect that when a crew goes out, that like if they're on on the community working, we want them to be able to be. You can't just walk into any establishment. We can't go to the bar and use the restrooms there and those kinds of things like that. We expect that there'll be something set up that will be where they can use. Most of them are they're not mobile places. Most places we go, like I'll use the fairgrounds. We're at the fairgrounds. They have everything available to them there. I've not heard anybody complain to me about not being able to find a restroom yet. So.
I'll give you an example. Road repair crew. They're driving around filling potholes all day.
Okay. Okay.
So I mean, is there a way in which, the
Right.
objection has been we would have to carry a portable, and I don't know if that's true, but that.
I've never heard this.
So if you're moving around, if you're literally going around town, taking care of one pothole after another, you're not in one place. Is there a way to solve that problem, or is that a challenge?
First step is awareness, and so I'm now aware. So
Okay, well, I would
into that.
challenge you to think about that. Having been on a pothole crew, it's very simple to do. It's manual labor, and it'd probably be perfect if we could figure out how to make it work.
We work with the Department of Transportation. They go down the interstates, and I can't imagine they're carrying a porta potty with them. I don't know what they're.
Well, I would think every so often you simply just get in the truck and you drive somewhere that's already been. Are they allowed to, if you ask for permission in advance? Like, for example, if you asked a certain establishment, would you allow us for the inmates to? Can they do that if you pre-authorize it?
Yeah, I don't know why not. So, but
okay.
I'm going to check and see what, how how many mobile crews we have and what they're currently doing to make sure that we're consistent with that too, so.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and another example would be, we're doing maybe an overlay in a neighborhood, and you're in a neighborhood, so you're not necessarily just gonna walk up to somebody's house. You're gonna have to go somewhere, or you're gonna have to have a facility. But it's just a project where you're just there for in and out in 4 hours,
Right.
as an example, or the day. So,
I'm quite certain that they go into gas stations or convenience stores and use a restroom.
all right.
I'm sure of that, so.
I think it would be a great thing if we could figure out how to make it work. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it to my attention.
Any other questions for the warden? Counselor Brecky?
Different, go off on mine. You and I have had a conversation about this, and I think just as long as you're here, I'd like to, give you the opportunity to speak about it a little bit, that a large percentage of the population in the penitentiary is now people with addictions and mental health issues. Can you update me from the past conversation about your efforts to try to, have them have opportunities, while they're in the penitentiary to get treatment? And
Could I just, he has to be in an appointment. And so I was kind of wanting this to be focused on that budget of the scoop it part. I think what we should do is have him come back in for an informational.
that's fine.
Because there are other people
I-
who are
yeah,
waiting to talk.
I prefaced it by saying I was kind of off because he was there.
But,
and
he,
just
but I
would like
had
to
him
ask the
come
questions.
speak first
Yeah.
because he has to go because he has an appointment. So I don't want to be, we did kind of, and I didn't mean to ambush you here with these other questions about, but
I love where I work.
no, and
I love talking about it.
and I think we love hearing it, and I think the public probably enjoys it too. But I kind of was going to be focused on getting through some of these other people are waiting. And one more thing so Counselor Brecky, I didn't mean to cut you off, but back to the budget, I also have on here the municipal forestry program, just so you say publicly that inmate labor could also be used to help support the park department in trimming trees. And you've already been doing that, right? Didn't you help with the emerald ash borer? Yes. So,
I don't know what we've been doing so far. I think we just had the 4 at the landfill and there's 1 somewhere else, but I don't know how many more they have there. But the answer to your question is, I think, last year when we started working with the flooding and the city was, needed some help. The city was great about setting up a bunch of supervisors to get trained on how to supervise inmates. That made it go seamless. I mean, that was such good cooperation between the 2 agencies. And it was really refreshing to see how well accepted and how quickly everything went. That was really great. Just so, those staff that went through that training, the training applies no matter you're doing flooding or trees or landfill or whatever. It's the same training. Whatever training you would, and whatever protective gear you would give somebody on a crew of, cutting trees would be the same you would give to an inmate. Whatever response you would do if the person got hurt, if it was one of your full-time employees versus an inmate, is the same. If the person's having a heart attack, you would call 911 and give first responder training. So it's the same aspect. So these are all programs that we could do, but we would probably definitely, I want to make sure that the mobility fact that we were just talking about is taken care of too, because
the bathroom issue?
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to make sure that's all, because that's how it works. I mean, and the reality is they are still, they are people and they will I have needs just like restroom needs like everybody else does, so.
So you're a popular guest, is what we have to say.
All
So,
right.
thank you.
Well,
Thank you
thanks
for
for
coming
coming
in.
in. We appreciate
Thanks for
your
having
time.
me today.
Next up, or just did you have something else you wanted to?
Yeah, I've got a list of things here.
Okay, let's keep her
Okay,
moving.
so then the next thing I wanted to put on our list was the South Side swimming pool issue. We've been getting, at least I've been getting a lot of emails from the middle school children on the south end of town. And so this is just putting this on the budget. And I wanted to read this letter. our names are Jewel, Hannah, and Anna. We took off their last names. We are 7th graders at Harrisburg North Middle School. We are constituents of yours, and we are interested in having a pool built on the southern side of Sioux Falls. First of all, we do not have a public pool on the south side of Sioux Falls. Therefore, residents on this side of town have to travel to get to the nearest public pool. Kids would be able to ride their bikes to the new public pool. Students on the south side of Sioux Falls will be able to have fun in the summertime at this new pool. The pool could have a tube and a body slide named after rivers such as the Big Sioux River and the Missouri River. The slides could be blue and similar to the slides at Terrace Park. The main pool could be shaped like South Dakota, and there could be a kiddie pool placed like Sioux Falls. Shaped like, the size of the pool wouldn't need to be huge, but rather similar to Drake Springs. This issue affects us because we live on the south side of Sioux Falls. If we had a public pool near us, we would not have to travel a long way away to have fun in the summer. Other people could enjoy it in the summer too, and can either ride their bike or walk to the new pool. The community will have lots of fun with this pool. We would like you to bring this idea to the city council and would support your help with this pool being built. Sincerely, and the students. And so I just wanted to share that letter to give an example of what I've been hearing from children on that part of town, and also to say that when we're doing these projects, we do a lot of canvassing with adults. I think we should start including children in the informational gathering, because they're the ones who are actually the recipients of our park program. Second, the next thing, municipal forestry program, and this would tie in with the discussion I just had with the warden. And we just did a Project Trim pilot project, and they determined it's about $1.6 million to implement it, and maybe $650,000 after that. So again, I would like to see the city look at developing a forestry program where we take care of the trees on the boulevard. And there's problematic parts with how we're implementing it anyway with Project Trim. And I'd like Val, would you come up, please? Val Ray is going to just give a brief explanation of what actually happened in their neighborhood.
Way up here.
Yeah, and to the microphone, please.
You can introduce yourself to everybody, please.
Pull the mics down, Val, so that.
Pull who down?
Yeah.
Valerie Ray. I live on the east side, and I was noticing the other day that the gal was out there looking at a tree on the boulevard, and it kind of hung over on the sidewalk, and she was concerned that there was enough space. 10 feet, I guess, is what the normal is. And she was just talking, and I said, well, I've got a saw, and I've got I can get up there, and we cut it. No sweat. Done deal. I measured it. I had a nice 25 foot to make sure we were up there high enough, and done deal. Well, I was talking to, he owns the property there. I was talking to him today. His name is Josh. And he said, after we got that all done, nice clean, my husband took the limb away, no problem. I was talking to Josh today, and he said that they charged him $100 for that. And if he didn't pay it in time, they were going to add cost to it, more. This seems like not a good story. It started out kind of fun, wasn't it? Huh? You'd listen to it? Charging that kind of money for what? Maybe somebody could answer my question. Meow? Am I done?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, an example of they had done it and got fined anyway. So again, I hear these stories all the time. I think that it's going to be a very beneficial thing to our community if we can start absorbing the costs and they're taking on the responsibility of the boulevard trees. Next thing I would like to see in the budget at some point is the Wi-Fi availability at the bus terminal. And Kathy Brechtelsbauer is the citizen advocate here who had brought this to all of our attention, I believe.
Yeah, I sent it to all the counselors, but I guess there are other people in the room here who don't know.
Right.
I think we need to have Wi-Fi at the bus station, at the bus stop. I'm not asking for it on all the buses, but at the bus stop, because what happened to me in snowy afternoon in January, I went in there because I had time, because I just barely missed my bus, so I had time to talk to everybody. And there were 10 people, so I just did a little survey, being the outgoing person that I am, and I asked them about their phones, because I knew that there's some talk about using phones for the pilot program. So I thought, let's find out how we're doing on phones. And so what happened was one of the people in there had, everybody had some sort of a phone. One had a smartphone, he had plenty of minutes, he had plenty of data, and he could do anything on his phone. That was one. One person had a phone that was probably a track phone or something or other, and he said, I'm out of minutes, I can't do anything on my phone. So his phone was, he considered useless. The other 8 people, I asked each one individually, if you had a phone, can you use it? Do you have plenty of data? And no, they were all short of data. So I wouldn't have known anything about this until just over a year ago when I got this kind of phone. And I discovered that if you're going to look things up like other people are always doing, you have to have a certain amount of data on your phone. So I don't have a whole lot. So when I go into a place, I just click on settings and look at, get on whatever the Wi-Fi is. And then you don't have to worry about your data. And so I wouldn't have known anything about this until more recently. So we couldn't do it. I asked at the bus stop, what's the Wi-Fi here? And she said, we don't have it. So this afternoon, when I came in here, I just clicked on settings, and there's Wi-Fi. And it opens right up. I didn't even have to get the password. I was heading for the office over there to get the password. And you don't even have to. It's so nice. And so I'm just thinking, these people who ride the bus, these are our heroes. They're moving through the city in a responsible way. They're not putting, more cars on the streets. They're helping by keeping the environment cleaner by riding the bus and reducing congestion and need for parking and all those reasons that it's important to ride the bus. And we need to respect them as heroes. And it just seems like one little respectful thing we could do for our bus riders would be just to have Wi-Fi at the bus. So I don't know how much it costs. Somebody can figure that out. I was talking to my sister on the phone this morning, and she said, well, that would be a nice thing that some internet company could donate to the city. So if maybe there's some charismatic city leader here who could try to entice some internet company to make a donation, I'm sure somebody would be happy to put up Wi-Fi at this station is donated by such and such. But in any case, it can't be a huge expense, but it would be really nice to respect our bus riders, because they have to sit there and wait between buses. And they have phones, most of them. And it'd be nice if they could look up the weather or look up the bus route or look up whatever they need to look up. So that's my request, and I thank you for considering that.
Thank you.
And lastly, I'd like Pastor Jeff and his son Josh Hayes to come forward. And I think we have just a short video of what they're doing that I would like to add some funding to. This entity provides the Friday food giveaway. How many years have you been doing this for?
11 years.
11 years, every Friday, 70 volunteers. They're buying their food from Feeding South Dakota. The cost is about $2,000 approximately a week. And what's the rent that you're paying on the building at the fairgrounds?
We pay $250 a week for the rent on the building, the Nordstrom Johnson building.
So what I'm hoping to propose in the budget is, like, we are covering the operational costs for the Bishop Dudley at $120,000, and would like to propose that we we designate $50,000 for the operational costs for this entity because they are servicing these people, and the 211 helpline is directing people to their food giveaway every week. And how often can people go to the food pantry?
Typically,
The food pantry at Feeding South Dakota, you can go once every 90 days, and you receive approximately enough food for 5 days. And with the Faith Temple Food Giveaway, families and individuals can come every Friday and receive about 30 pounds of food.
And it's all, I've been there a few times, these people are making it all happen and carrying the burden of the costs, which I think is serving a huge need for our community. Is there something you wanted to add to that?
well, we appreciate you and your invitation today. You know, God bless you. We do the food giveaway every Friday for struggling families in Sioux Falls. You'll see the video in just a little bit. It's a time lapse. And at that food giveaway, there were about 650 people. Normally, we give away about 25 to 30,000 pounds of food every week. And typically 70 volunteers, and all of them aren't from our church, but a lot of them have come actually from people who came for the food, and then they realized that they could certainly volunteer as well. And so we work closely with Feeding South Dakota and appreciate all that they do. And also we work with Scott out at the Sioux Empire Fairgrounds. And of course, the building was donated by the Nordstrom Johnson building, Nordstrom Johnson family just a few years ago. So it's come together over the last 11 years. We started in our parking lot 11 years ago and gave the Sioux Falls Police Department several headaches. But we've been going for 11 years, and we're thankful for the food giveaway.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So I'd just like to show a short video of just how this thing works.
Smokes.
Wow.
Yeah, actually, when 600 people come, we typically realize that there's about 3 people that are fed from each box of food. And normally it's like 50 pounds of food, 60 pounds of food that they get. We have wagon pullers, and so they pull the food out to the people's cars, if they have a car. And there's some people that come on bicycles, and some people come on the bus. Some people walk to the food giveaway to get there. So.
And anyone can come.
Anyone can come, yep. Yeah. They're always welcomed. There's plenty of people that are refugees that come. I know one comment from Bob Zerpel that really is amazing, and he's the manager for the Minnehaha Northern Lincoln County Department of South Dakota Social Services. And he told me a number of years ago that they've referred tens of thousands of people to the food giveaway. And I called him the other day, and he says, yep, that's still true. And he said, actually, there's 300 to 400 people that come to social services every day, and they give them a pamphlet with our name on it. And so we receive a lot of people from social services, too, at the food giveaway.
I know that we did a thing as a council, a couple people couldn't make it, but like, I think it was through the fairgrounds where you kind of drive through, they load you up, you go do like Christmas presents and food and that kind of thing. Are you tied in with that as well?
That's another program, actually.
Okay.
And we appreciate them because anything that they have left over comes to the food giveaway. And then we give it away on Friday.
Interesting.
Yeah. We work with a lot of organizations around Sioux Falls, if it be the Bread Break people, also the banquet, if they receive a lot of food and fills their freezers, typically either bring it out to us, we go get it. And so wherever we get food from, we're willing to give it away. We don't store any food. The food that comes, we just give it all away that day. And hopefully it lasts until the very last person goes through the line. So,
awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, any other
Thank you.
questions? Thanks for the presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us today, too.
So we've gone through your list. Councilor Starr, do you have anything to share today? Okay. Councilor Reitzert?
Well, real quick, I have talked to directors about various items over the past several weeks, just lifting a few of the big ones up that I would just call out. Obviously, road construction, that doesn't have to be major projects, that also can be pothole, frost boil, smaller repairs, whatever we need. It could be everything from we need another tamper or another truck or another full-time employee, whatever it is, let's do it. Everybody knows I'm big on bike trails, storm drainage improvements. As much as we can do with that, that continues to be an issue. That could be very large projects down to smaller neighborhood projects to improve storm drainage. We've done some of that on the west side, and there's still existing areas that could use some help. The Housing Trust Fund, how do we get that going? Do we prime the pump? Do we make a one-time infusion to get the housing clinic going? And then the transit issue, and that could mean a lot of things, by the way. That could be trying the pilot out. It could be bringing in a consultant to look at other options, depending on how the pilot goes, whatever else. And then, of course, the triage center, making sure that whatever, and that's still to be defined, I think, but whatever funding we're going to have to potentially provide for that one time and or an ongoing budget item for presumably our share of an operational cost, if we're going to do that, in addition to the funding that we're, or the in-kind, I guess, of the building that we're providing. So those are the big items I'd call out right now.
Okay.
So
thank you.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Could you go into what the Housing Trust Fund is?
Oh, yeah, so with the housing clinic that they're proposing to start as a city, essentially it would be some sort of segregated fund that would provide funding for the different programs that they're talking about, like to fund the housing clinic when people come in and they may get, and it's still to be defined, but as they've been talking about with Shelley's new coming on, like would they provide money for the first month's rent or helping you to get out of bad housing or whatever else, and something is going to have to fund that, and the question is going to be where does the money come from to get it moving, and then the ongoing funding to run what I believe they call it the housing clinic is kind of the parochial name for it. So, and the specific programs I think are still kind of, I think they're still working on, but you've heard about some of it, about like Project Tom and some of those things, but so that's all it means. It's just a segregated fund that would be just used for making this housing clinic work. So.
All right. Councilor Brecky.
It was interesting to look at last year's list and see the accomplishments. You know, we actually, in our priorities, you know, the first, 5 were, really something that we began working on and had success with. So it was also good to look, as a reminder, some of those things that didn't show up first this year, that doesn't mean they're irrelevant, this year, or they didn't show up first last year, doesn't mean they're irrelevant this year. And one that I would like to make a big pitch for this year, actually shows up is from the bottom, it's number 8 from the bottom, a multicultural center, broaden cities' involvement, LSS, Southeast Technical Institute. And basically what I'd like to present to the council is conceptually, we need to do I think a broader brush approach to getting opportunities for English education to our diverse population. And we started it with STI. The first year I was here with a $100,000 payment, and they started a program which has been an extraordinary program for them. And so we followed up last year with another $50,000. And it's churning out some excellent results. And it is one of my passions. I will tell you, I have taken a deep dive into that entire issue about, fluent English and its availability in our community. And I have talked to pretty much every ethnic group that would have me, to discuss this issue. Number one, to ask them, would it help you if we could make, English readily available and easily accessible, and hopefully cheap or free. And without hesitation, every group I've spoken to, I've spoken to Afro-American groups, Ethiopians, Mexican Americans, I've spoken to the LSS, I've spoken to STI, I've spoken to the Multicultural Center. And so my approach at this point would be to suggest that we've already started it with STI. And so I went back and circled around to the three entities that are really have the best connections with the diverse community and the best ability to do it, because they have the staffing, some of them have the staffing already to do it. So I went back to LSS after we had, that meeting where we received their annual report. And I remember, I actually, at that meeting, I said, if we pass this resolution and do nothing more, we've said something and done nothing. And it's a start, but I really wanted to do something more. So I did go out and visit with them. You have Dave, if you could put this up there, could you put this up there, the sheet that I have? I asked them to come up with something, by way of presentation, and she was going to try to be here today. I don't think she's here yet. Vicki was going to try to be here. If you could just put it up on the screen. Yeah. I asked them to come together with some sort of a programming idea, and I really love the concept that they kind of settled in on. And again, utilizing they have skilled teachers that are trained in this area, but because they don't have as many immigrants coming through right now, or refugees coming through, they have the talent pool in their staff to utilize to actually perform this function, but they just don't have the funding to do it. So what I'm talking about is not just workplace English, but providing a trail of English so that you can go from workplace to conversational to fluent. And that's an ongoing long-term process, and it also, I would describe it as a loop. Once it starts kicking people out at the fluent level, the opportunities come along with that. And we're about 3,000 behind. I mean, that's the adult population in our community right now that is not English speaking. We're doing pretty well with the children in the community. Multicultural Center's doing a pretty good job, and our school system's doing a pretty good job of integrating, English into the school children's lives. But it's the parents that are going to keep coming over and are coming over with their children that are falling behind. And so it would be my goal in this session to see if we can't, give some funding, probably around $100,000 to Lutheran Social Services to spearhead some programs. And again, what they came up with was they have the ability to take the programming right into the workplace, and they have a relationship with a lot of different employers in town. Yay, you came in just in time. I'm just about to introduce you. And came up with the idea that, they could do some programming, right in the workplace. So you'd be not only teaching them conversational English, but conversational and, continued workplace English. Again, that would eventually follow a thread where it could be, you could follow up and eventually, get into that fluent English place. And again, just for those listening, as I understand it, it's 6 to 8 weeks to learn workplace English. That's what LSS contracts with the federal government to do, but they don't have any funding to go beyond that. And for me, that's because, those are our obligations from the federal government, our refugee population. I think as a community, now we need to circle them with what else they need to be successful in the community, and not just look to LSS, who gets criticized all the time for not taking it any further. Well, I think it's because that's really not their job. It's ours as a community, and I've talked to several large businesses who would also agree, Forward Sioux Falls would also agree, as a community, we need to pick it up, from there. So I would see this as a start. You probably will see me coming back next year. It would be on my long-range plan to talk to Multicultural Center, who I have talked to in the past, but not recently, who would be interested in offering programming as well, and utilize those three entities who are very capable and have those connections to do that. But in addition, I see further down the road, working with the school district, utilizing the hundreds of classes, English classes that are being taught every day, and coming up with something that we could utilize through technology, through iPads or cable TV or, you know, different things that we could do that we should actually create opportunities for individuals, you know, to teach themselves English, you know, in their own home or at the library or something. So it's kind of a lengthy description, but I see this as a real viable piece, and it's a direction I really think it's important that the city goes. And I would just really love the support of the council to show some leadership here. You know, when we had that very emotional and positive meeting, and, you know, acknowledging that our population is changing, I think it's really important that we do more than just say, you know, you're welcome here, but we actually do things that set people up for success. And so I would ask you to come on up and state your name and just speak a little bit about the program you put together, or the opportunities that you see out there with your staff and your connections, not only in the business community, but with the diverse population, and then answer any questions anybody might have.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Kiso-Knutson. I'm the VP of Community Services for LSS. So historically, what I would say is we have not approached the city to request funding for ESL classes, primarily because the population that we serve is the refugee population, and funding for ESL classes is a part of that federal funding. And so but through time, what has happened is we've developed a pretty sophisticated system for delivery of ESL services. In recent years, due to decreases in the number of refugee arrivals that have been coming into the state, we've reduced the scope of the services that we are able to offer just with the funding that's there. So when Councilor Brecky approached us and said, what would it take to do more, and what kind of gaps do you see in services? This is our assessment of what we feel the gaps are currently, which is primarily related to transportation, trying to get people to places where classes are available to them. Most of the individuals who are taking ESL classes are also working full-time, so that innovative strategy to work with employers to offer on-site ESL classes really helps to reduce that barrier of then having to get them across town so that they can get to a class. And then childcare is the other sometimes barrier for folks who have young kids but also want to do ESL classes. We're not able to currently offer childcare to help cover that time when they're in class. So those are the gaps we identified, and obviously the strategies that we outlined to try to address those gaps and increase access to services for both refugees who've been in country longer, but also the immigrant population, which we know is also in need of ESL services. With that, I would entertain any questions that anyone has.
Thank you. Any questions? You must have explained it well.
Your timing was impeccable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have anything else on your agenda?
Yeah, on my list,
Brecky?
and I'm sorry I didn't hand out a list, but I have a list. Again, several of mine are just repeats, but I'm hoping that they will move up the list. As you recall, last year the council did budget $3,000 for visionary goal setting, and I'm working with Dave right now on putting together something that to program those funds, to actually spend those funds. And that would involve, having someone come in to work with us. We're looking at 2 sessions right now, and that's a $3,000, from the council budget. What I'd like the council to begin thinking about now is if once we do that, when we actually start setting big goals, big picture goals, not just budgetary goals, but bigger goals, for the entire city. And that's kind of, along the line of what Councilor Neitzer was just doing, a little more than just budget, but, what are those issues that we want to direct, serious goal setting and objectives and funding for. And, that's where I see it leading to a possible, funding for long-range strategic planning. You've heard me talk about it a lot. After we do these sessions, and again, we'll be bringing it to you, we decided to wait till after the election because it didn't make any sense to try to, do that until we have the new council members on board, if we have any. And once we have those goals, I think then will be the time to kind of discuss where do we want to go with here from that. And again, I've always seen that process as one working side by side, hand in glove with the mayor's office and the administrative staff. and the council really feathering their goals into that bigger budgetary and CIP process, at the front end, as opposed to what we're trying to do right now. Or we actually are at the front end this time, but as opposed to when we, get the budget and as Teresa Staley said many times, it gets cemented in. So that would be something I would be looking to propose. And then I'm still interested in seeing our city council have a presence at the Congress of Cities. We went another year without doing that. I think we're a large city. I think it's really important not only for our benefit to have a presence there, but it's for those other large cities who are our kindred spirits that we need to, have a presence, because we have very influential congressmen, and at the Congress of Cities, they storm the Capitol Hill. They have meetings with the congressmen, and our ability to introduce, other cities to our congressmen could be very helpful in those large scale goals that, National League of Cities has, for cities all across the country, such as an infrastructure bill and those kinds of things. And so this year I will be proposing that. Last year I just proposed that we have 3 council members go, but this year I would propose that we have our council leadership go. That whoever's the council leadership, that they go to the Congress of Cities and be our voice piece, that there be a meeting before we, go, or that they contact us, when they're there, as to, what our agenda is for when they go, to Capitol Hill and speak with our congressional delegation. The other thing that I have is for the parks. Council members always like to get involved with the parks because that's fun and exciting. And mostly, this isn't so much a budgetary goal as a kind of a prioritization. We have the Parks Master Plan, and I just want to say that 3 things really, stuck out for me as things that I would like to see, as they unfold that master plan. Actually, 2 of them. One was that ribbon of ice, that reusable ice. I think that was very exciting, and I really want to support them on that. I want them to know that, boy, they really caught my eye with that. I certainly see that as there being a place for that, and so I would be favorable if that shows up in a positive way in the nearer rather than latter future for the outside ice skating activities. I too am intrigued by the need for a pool in the south end of town. We kind of seem to have forgotten about it. It doesn't seem to be particularly on the radar, and I don't even know if it was in the master plan. I don't think it was. And that is my end of town where I live, and so that's Council Member Kiley's district, but those kids do, I think, deserve a pool too. I don't know why that's not been of interest. So I hope there's a little more discussion about that. And then I'll bring it back from last year. We have an asset out at Arrowhead Park. The house was donated out there, and it's really falling down around itself. It's got some serious maintenance issues, and I think that I've talked to Don Kearney about it, and I think it's a matter of, do we repurpose it? Do we take it down completely? But it does need some planning, and we shouldn't just let it tumble down. And so whether it needs to be completely taken down as something done there, or whether it maybe needs to be turned into an interpretive center, whatever it is, it's a viable part of the park, and some of the most fabulous views are really from where that house is located on the hill. And so, I would like to see that, be given some focus and attention to, as part of that park programming. And then I would just throw my hat in the ring on I'm going to call it, we've been calling it Project Trim, but I'm going to call it Urban Forest Management. And I sat in on the meetings when Councilmember Staley met with it. And while it does seem to have a high price tag, there's 2 things that occurred to me that I thought were really important that we're kind of forgetting about. And that is, at the moment, we are in the process of reforesting our city. So as long as we're in the process of reforesting our city, it makes sense to take a look at what we're doing with our boulevards and what we've done with them in the past. And again, one of the things that, and I remember this again from back in my days when I worked for the city, because it would oftentimes end up in code enforcement and it would end up in the city attorney's office, people don't know how to trim trees properly. I call them the bush trees. And I don't care what you put on the brochures, people will trim the least amount of branches possible. And when you do that, it slows the growth of the tree. So if we decided that we wanted to manage our forest, when we do replant all of these ash trees, now would be the perfect time to jump in and do that, because we could actually make them grow faster. Because if they had sophisticated, pruning and nurturing from a program, management. If the city actually managed the program, they could get those trees to grow a lot faster, and we'd have our forest back a lot faster. And so there really is, I think, a very legitimate reason for doing that. And then in addition, it's one other thing that just kind of occurred to me. When we talk about parks and we talk about pools and we talk about those places where we use funds where everybody gets a benefit. So many of the things, it's like a benefit here and a benefit there, but there's some things, and this would be one, where everybody, gets a benefit all across the city. Something nice that government does would be done for them, but it would also be, I think, really a benefit to the city to try to manage that. And the other thing that I learned about it in that process is if the city manages it, the amount is going to reduce over time, because when they're properly trimmed, they need less trimming. And so when you stay on top of it, it's not as serious of trimming as when you go in and let it kind of get overgrown when you do it, kind of like the way we're doing it. So that figure, I think there's different ways to control that figure and manage that number, again, by using maybe penitentiary inmates and some other things to get that down to a manageable number. But I really am seriously interested in the idea that we should be managing our boulevards as we reforest our city.
All right. As far as my input to it, I'm not going to add a lot of, there's a lot of worthwhile projects that have been brought up, and I think there's plenty to chew on here. I think probably the thing that I will continue to talk about is what I've bent a lot of people's ear on, and on the triage center part of it, watching intently, seeing it come together, kind of fund-wise and everything else with it, how it develops, and then from there as we go, like we've talked about, that's one thing to get them there. The next thing is, where do we triage folks to? That's the next big step. So kind of learning about everything from the centers and the help and the people that are out there right now, learning from them what their insight is on just this subject in general. And if there is help that still needs to be done and more things to be done, well, what are we talking about for funding on that? And how does it all tie together? So I've really kind of had a particular interest in that subject, because I know quite a few of you are here, have heard me bend your ear a couple of times on it. That's kind of what I'll stick to today, but I think overall it was a good session, a lot of good input, and I think probably in light of this deadline coming up for the budget input, maybe we have Dave make a list of the items that we discussed today, and get those too from even the counselors who couldn't be here. And then we kind of talked about listing them all out. I don't know if we necessarily have to prioritize or rank, but just have them all listed out here, and then by Friday we have them out there for consideration, send it to the administration, send it to the counselors, we see exactly what we've got out there, and we kind of go from there. So I think that's kind of how we've discussed it. Any input or anybody else has?
So we're going to have another session to, actually, because I would like to respond to yours. You have spoke to me about it. I think that's real, it should be, I think it should be a priority too. I would support your energies on that, because again, that whole issue of where we're going to triage them to, and there are some role models in the country where, they've got these, facilities, these treatment facilities, and in order for the triage to be a success, there's two other goal phases in that came out of that whole task force, and I think jumping in front of those is something exciting and something, again, I would join you in being a part of. But I'm wondering, where we're going from here. We've just, as I saw this was presentation day, but I would like to be engaged, and see what,
What is our deadline again? Haven't we had everything? Can you remind us where we're at?
The administration moved up the deadline. They moved it up about a month earlier due to the fact that they're trying to get the information to the council earlier. So last year it was late March that it was due. This year, now we're right in that window where it would be due. So if you're going to rank them, we'd have to put it on a fast track.
But wouldn't we be ranking them like at a meeting? Is that when we're going to have a meeting, right? We're not going to just like vote without discussing them, are we?
Last year, you had this type of a meeting.
Right.
And then they got sent out, and then you selected which ones you wanted to be brought forward as a priority.
I thought we had a second meeting.
We did, but the first one, we ranked it by weight, and that wasn't acceptable. So then it came back and ranked it by the number of votes for each item.
But we also had some discussion in the midst of that too. When did the deadline get changed?
This year with the advancement or bring.
Because I thought we still had some time into, I thought Sean told me we had some time into March.
Well, I guess we could ask Sean to come up and.
Yeah, I thought we could still, I mean.
So one of the pieces of feedback we had in talking to some of the council members was, when the information is coming to you with the full budget, so you have enough time for consideration as we go into budget hearings. So one of the goals we had in communicating with council leadership and with some council staff is, can we get like a week and a half, like 10 days earlier potentially, on turning over the budget and to the capital program than where we've been in the past. So we're working toward that goal, and then we've kind of back-ended from that. To get there, it has kind of accelerated things a little bit forward this year, but in and amongst that, we're still in the working phases of everything. So, while sooner is always better than later in terms of the information getting back from you, it's certainly welcome at any time. We're still kind of in that, I think you've used that sausage making phase. So there you go.
And any changes we're talking about are, again, the idea is to get us information sooner.
Yep. Perfect.
Well, and let's be frank here. I mean, a lot of the things brought up today are not big ticket items. So it would be a matter of just mixing them into the batter of, yeah, we'll consider this, we'll consider that. Just like when we talked about the Project Trim pilot that we did, that just got absorbed into the budget.
And some items can be fairly significant and couldn't be moved forward in a quick way.
Right, and they might be just included.
Future,
yeah. And to me, what I just am so grateful we're having this discussion publicly, because it starts, like I said earlier, we're planting the seeds, and you may say, yeah, that's a good idea. We hear the public thinks this is important. We're going to incorporate it ourselves, because we really don't know. We're not going to know, the council won't know until this summer really what's in the budget, right? So
yes, as we start rolling out the proposal.
yeah, so you still have you're still working on your part of it. So we're still in the early stages, really, aren't we?
Correct, yep.
So, okay.
But
so
sooner rather than later is always helpful.
And the list, I understand. And the list we have here, actually, I don't think, because we didn't bring some of these up, like, I didn't bring up the Frank Olson, where is that? Frank Olson. That was on do you see Frank Olson on there? Oh, yeah, renovate and repair Frank. I didn't bring that up now because I feel very secure that Don Kearney promised that is going to be taken care of. So I've taken that off the list. So I hope you aren't getting the wrong message that I don't think it's important anymore, right? I mean, do we have to keep saying it?
What's that?
Well, I mean, saving these pools. We got Keene Park on here. I mean, that was last year, and now we know that that's happening. You see, we put that out there, and here it is. So maybe we're putting that out there. Maybe the park department's going to come up in their budget and say, yeah, we think Project Trim, we're going to do it. I mean, these are suggestions we're throwing out to you.
Yep.
Right, yes.
Correct.
Okay.
So I think we do, for now, why don't we get this list together and get it out, and then we'll work on the next step.
Well, I'm going to make a suggestion that the final step be done in a public meeting, because again, we've had presentations and we will have input here, but now the public needs to roll it around a little bit. If they've been watching and they think any of our ideas are better than any of the others, it would be nice to have them come in and have some testimony from them. And then we could just have it on there and do some sort of a ranking thing, couldn't we? Right at the meeting, and then turn those in?
Yeah, I thought you were going to do it informational, and that you were going to tell us how the rankings had gone, like we did last year.
There was discussion of doing an informational in lieu of doing another work session, and we can certainly do that. I look for the direction from the council.
Let's get the list out. We will put it on an informational. Let's do it that way. And then we'll figure out soon, we'll get that lined up. And then
Good.
as far as a ranking in between now and that informational, we can figure that part out. That would be my input.
Thank you.
If I could, Mr. Chair, while Mr. Bixler's still here.
Yes, sir.
When do we put the council budget? What's our deadline then to submit the council's budget to the administration, and how do we go through that process again more? I know what the process is, but I want to at least hear it as part of this.
I work with the city clerk and the audit manager, and they pull together their budgets, and then I pull together the council budget, and we usually want to have that done in the June, July timeframe.
Okay,
Get
so
that over
a little more time.
the administration, and there's times where we can make some adjustments, but for the most part, that's the timeline that I try to stick to.
Perfect. Thank you.
So we can still add things from this list onto just as far as priorities go. Because there are people that aren't here today who might have some things to add too, right?
The informational coming up, is that what you're?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you have input? Oh, you're sneaking up.
Just quickly, as an idea, we could utilize what we did for legislative priorities, have that list of priorities. Maybe they're not weighted, but they're the priorities of the council for consideration by the administration, and then it could just be approved by a resolution. Just an option to be considered by everyone. So it may not mean that you actually endorse every single item, but you're officially submitting it to the administration for its
These
consideration.
have been items of interest, right? Okay. So we'll get the list together. We will plan this for an informational coming up soon, and then we'll figure that part out and go to step 2. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I think that's it.
Open discussion, or excuse me, public input?
That's right. We do need to have public comment. And is there any input on what we've discussed today? Doesn't look like it. All right, we will adjourn. Thank you.